True or false? I'm going to ask you this question at the end of the video. True or false? If Joseph is the biological father of Yeshua or Jesus, Matthew's count of 14 generations to Christ would be incorrect. True or false? Answer now before we begin.
All right, shalom, shalom. I need you with a Yoruba, and guess what? I'm back. Well, I know I'm getting on y'all nerves with this virgin birth series, but I don't care. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, you've never been to my YouTube channel first, go ahead, like, share, and subscribe. You can find me at youtube.com/Judah the Shooter. They call me Judah the Shooter because I shoot out scripture, I shoot out information, and look, I'm a straight shooter, ladies and gentlemen. So that being said, as you know, I've been doing these virgin birth series. I started about a month ago, and I started with this one right here, the virgin birth Greek and Hebrew grammar explained. I started with that one. Then I turned right around and did this one right here, the virgin birth Greek and Hebrew grammar explained, the Keal shop part 2. Then I went on and did part 3 as well. And then I did a part 4, the virgin birth Syriac and Hebrew grammar explained, the Keal shop part 4, ladies and gentlemen. That one I went into the Syriacs and Sinaiticus, of course. Then, of course, a few days ago, about 3 days ago, I went to the virgin birth, the earliest Greek manuscripts explained, the Keal shop part 5, ladies and gentlemen. So I definitely did that. And now I am on this one right here. Well, this video won't take much. I did this one yesterday, you know what I'm saying? So I did this one yesterday, and yeah, so look like some people's paying attention. All praise to the Most High for that. You know what I'm saying? So definitely did that. So definitely shout out to this brother. I don't know what camp you with. He didn't reveal it, but you can see the comment right there. People are listening, people are watching. So this one right here is the virgin birth, Matthew's 42 generations, the Keal shop part 6. Now the video that you're watching right now was actually part 2 to this video. All right, so there was a brother who inspired me to do this, and I was actually speaking to him today. He's from a group known as SOT. If you know who that is, then you already know who I'm speaking about. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, definitely shout out to that brother. He's a good brother of mine. So if you're watching this, brother, definitely for you. I explained to him what I went over in the video, and he understood it, but then he needed some more clarity. So I just told him that in short, I told him, what did I tell him? I said, I'm about to do another Matthew 1:17 video and go into more details for you. This video right here would be more airtight. I created a slideshow for you, Art. Yeah, so I was basically saying that his group SOT won't be able to debunk this or any of the series. You know what I'm saying? I said it's time for these groups to repent of their lies. I'm glad you heard me out, and I'm glad you was open-minded and listened. This video is for you. I'm about to do it tonight. So definitely shout out to that brother. He's a good brother of mine. I've been knowing him for, man, quite some time now. You know what I'm saying? And look, brothers and sisters, look, no matter what group you are, this ain't personal. You know what I'm saying? I know there's some good brothers in a lot of these groups, even though I don't agree with you all. I talk to brothers in pretty much any camp you can think about. You know what I'm saying? So, and we disagree, but I have good brothers in these groups. It's never done personal. You know what I'm saying? So I ain't got no beef with anybody. But nonetheless, we're going to get this truth out, ladies and gentlemen. So look, if you have not watched from series 1, then none of this is going to make any sense. All right. And if you're watching this video and you haven't even seen this one right here, the virgin birth, Matthew's 42 generations, the Keal shop part 6, for you, this really is not going to make sense. So make sure you watch these first. Make sure you don't skip them and you watch them in order. It's the only way to fully understand this. I set it up that way. And I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, somebody is going to be hard-headed and they're not going to listen. They're not going to listen. They still going to skip. And you know what they're going to do? They're going to ask me questions, or they're going to bring up points that I've already covered. So a disclaimer to have on my page: if you comment on the video, it's welcome. If you ask questions that is not on the topic, if you troll, if you duck questions, guess what? You'll be blocked. That's how it go. All right. That is in the description on my actual page. If you didn't see it, not my fault. I've given a disclaimer from the first day I made this YouTube channel. This particular channel I made back in 2020, I want to say. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And guess what I did for you all? I created another slide for you all. Look at that. Look at God. Still God a hand. All right, let me get a sip of my water real quick. This is part 2. And I'm going to give a small recap for you all. So the virgin birth, Matthew's 42 generations to Keal shot, part 7. Small recap. Then slideshow. Matthew's list of compressed kings. Matthew jumps from Joram to Uzziah. That's a fact. Matthew 1:8, it says, and Asa begat Jehoshaphat, and Jehoshaphat begat Joram, and Joram begat Ozias. Now, Ozias also, that's the Greek word, the Greek equivalent for Uzziah. Now, I have to address something really quick, because some of the things that was going over my brother's head when we were kind of going over this, which is why, another reason why I'm doing a part 2 to this, just to make sure nobody get no wiggle room. When we go to Matthew 1, he was kind of confused about the names, and he had never went to Chronicles and things like that to fully understand this, ladies and gentlemen. So this verse was kind of going over his head, and he didn't know the history of the kings that was skipped. All right, so he didn't fully understand that. So when we go to Uzziah or Uzziah, this name here, you see right here, Uzziah. So when we click here, it tell you that this name here, right, it is of Hebrew origins. Uzziah. Now, before I continue, let me show you something. Oh, I hate when it does that. Every time I click on that Hebrew, it always get rid of my screen. Jeez, let me go back and restore. Crazy work when it does that. All right, I got it back up. All right, cool. Here we go. Boom. So we go here, and then we go here, and then we go here. So up top it says Habisora Hakadosha, so the Holy Gospel, Al-P, according to the account of the mouth of Mattai. Short term for Matityahu. Perek was the chapter Aleph, which is 1. But when we go to 8, it says Va'asa Holid et Jehoshaphat. Jehoshaphat Holid et Yoram. Yoram Holid et Uzziyahu. That's the name right there that you see right here. Uzziyahu. See that right there? Boom. Same name you see right there. All right. So Matthew 1:8 is Uzziyahu, and that's what you know as Uzziah. All right. So, and it says, and Asa Holid, meaning he gave birth or fathered, at direct object marker. This is a Meketh. In one of my videos, I made a mistake and said a Metheg. So if you watch the series and those who know Hebrew, man, that's not no Metheg. That's a Meketh. You are correct. All right, but I did put it in the disclaimer in the description. I'm like, hold on, wait. I always do that, y'all. That's kind of one of my trip ups when I do Hebrew. But anyway, Jehoshaphat was Jehoshaphat, but Jehoshaphat meaning in Jehoshaphat holy, or he fathered at direct object marker. There goes the Meketh, which links one word to another. Yoram, the Yoram holy, or father at. Look at that, Uzziyahu. So, that being said, ladies and gents, now we know that Uzziah is Uzziyahu, which you see right there, Uzziah. As you see right here, Uzziah, my strength is Jehovah. All right. So when you look that up, you see Uzziah. So you might hear me say Uzziah. So that being said, we're gonna go back to the presentation real quick. Now that you know that. So, and once again here, it says Matthew 1:8, and Asa begat Jehoshaphat, Jehoshaphat begat Joram, and Joram begat Uzziah, aka Ozias. All right, so I said, but when I checked the royal history and what we call today the Old Testament, I found more kings between them. Between who? Joram and Uzziah, or Ozias. There were more people that were born in between these two kings. So, which means what? That the begat isn't always literal. Then I put here, Old Testament proof. Hopefully y'all following along. Chronicles and Kings, all right? Uzziah is also called Azariah. Keep that in mind. So Uzziah is also called Azariah. And in the Greek text, or from the King James English, which was translated from Greek, this Matthew 1, is renders that word Ozias. All right. So same person, different name in the text. So he didn't understand that. So now I'm doing this for you, brother. And granted, he was on a move as well. You know what I'm saying? He was going out, you know, doing his thing. So he didn't fully understand that. So just in case somebody did not, I'm kind of going over this for you as well. So between Jerome and Uzziah, aka Azariah or aka Ozias, the royal line includes Ahaziah, Joash, Amaziah, then Azariah, aka Uzziah, aka Ozias. All right, so we'll put that as well. All right, cool. You can verify that chain here. In other words, you can follow the timeline. 2 Chronicles 22nd chapter, Ahaziah follows Jerome, so he comes first. 2 Chronicles 24, then comes Joash. 2 Chronicles 25th chapter, then come Amaziah. All right, then 2 Chronicles 26 and 1, then comes who? Azariah, aka Uzziah, aka Ozias. He becomes king. That's the timeline. Now, Hebrews and elders, let's get the receipts. Here go the proof. You know, y'all be wanting that proof. Show me that, chapter and verse. Here go the timeline. So, Ahaziah, 2 Chronicles 22:1. You see that? Tell you right here. Ahaziah, right here. The youngest son, king in his stead. All right. Y'all read the verse. Remember, this is a small recap. So Ahaziah, the son of Jeroboam, king of Judah, reigned. First point, Chronicles explicitly says who? Ahaziah succeed Joram. All right. See that? He succeeds him. Right. So Joash comes after Ahaziah. How do we know? The same chapter tells us right here. Joash was the son of who? Ahaziah. See that? So now we know that Joash is his daddy. Then we keep going in the timeline, chapter 24, 2 chapters later. It says Joash was 7 years old when he began to reign. See that? And he reigned 40 years in Jerusalem. Second point, Chronicle clearly placed who? Joash after who? Ahaziah. See that? Which was the son of Joash. Because remember it said Joash was the son of Ahaziah. And it goes after Ahaziah. Boom, to Joash. Next point. It says Amaziah comes after Joash. 2 Chronicles 24, same chapter. The 27th verse, it tell you the sons of who? Joash. So now we got a timeline, ladies and gentlemen. 2 Chronicles 25 and 1. It says Amaziah was 25 years old when he began to rule the reign. Third point, Chronicles explicitly says Amaziah succeeds Joash. We just seen that. Then we come to the case in point. You have Azariah, aka Uzziah, aka what Matthew 1 and 8 calls Ozias. All right. He comes after Amaziah, which we just got done reading about in 2 Chronicles 25 and 1. We're now in 2 Chronicles 26 and 1. And we see the timeline has went from Jerome all the way down. Remember here? Here's the timeline. All right. All the way down to Ozias. All right. So, where we at? 26 and 1. It says, then all the people of Judah took who? Uzziah. That's Uzziyahu. As I just shown you in Hebrew. As I just shown you out of the concordance as well. A.k.a. Ozias as well. So he was 16 years old and made him king in the room of his father Amaziah. Fourth point. This verse directly states that Uzziah, also called Azariah or also called as Ozias in Matthew 1 and 8, is Amaziah's son. So brother, you watching this, now you get it. Now you get it. All right, because this was one of the biggest things that was kind of an issue for him. And I'm glad I had this conversation with him because now I get to go back and do a part 2. All right, so now let's go back and compare that with Matthew 1 and 8. All right, it says, and Jeroboam begat Ozias, aka Uzzias, aka Amaziah. All right. And and Ozias begat Jotham. So what Matthew does, he went from Jerome all the way down to Uzziah, aka Amaziah, aka Ozias. What Chronicles prove is it goes from Jerome, and then when you go to 2 Chronicles chapter 22 to 26, you find these names: Ahaziah, Joash, Amaziah, and Azariah, aka Uzziah, aka Ozias. All right. Kill shot is undeniable. This went over my brother's head, but now he'll watch this and he'll get it now. Matthew skips 3 kings on purpose. That proves beyond argument that begat in Matthew does not always mean direct biological father. It can mean ancestor, lineage, and royal succession. Because y'all elders don't fully understand Hebrew and Hebrew grammar, they don't know that. And because they don't understand Greek or Greek grammar, they don't know that either. All right. So I said, wait, you didn't catch that? Huh? Let's back this all the way up real quick. Once again, because y'all see me repeat myself, what Chronicles record actual royal succession: King Jerome of Judah, King Ahaziah, son of Jerome, King Joash, all the way to who? His son, King Amaziah, to his son, King Azariah, also called Uzziah, also called Ozias. Once again, you can refer to these chapters in 2 Chronicles chapter 22 all the way to 26th chapter. I said that is the real historical king by king order, what Matthew 1 and 8 records, and Jerome begat Uzziah. Once again, kill shot undeniable. Matthew skips 3 literal kings on purpose. Right here, King Ahaziah, who's mentioned in 2 Chronicles 22 verse 1, and his son, King Joash, which is mentioned where? 2 Chronicles 24 and 1, and King Amaziah, all right, which is mentioned in 2 Chronicles 25 verse 1. He skips over those 3 kings, because remember before them was Jeroboam, and he skipped over those 3 kings and went straight all the way to Uzziah, aka Ozias, that is mentioned in Matthew 1 and 8, aka Azariah. All right. I said Matthew uses begat even when 3 biological fathers are missing. That proves that begat can mean lineage succession, not literal sperm to son. Once you admit that, which you better, or you done, you lose the argument that Joseph must biologically father Yeshua, or who y'all call Yahushua, or Jesus, or Yeshua, whatever name you want to go with, Yehoshua, whatever name you want to go with. Just open the door for it, and we're going to slam the Christ is from Mary right in your face, So, second kill shot, as I explained further, Matthew says Jerome begat Uzziah, but Chronicles shows multiple generations in between them. So begat in Matthew is functioning as a lineage link language, not always direct father of, not always begat in a literal sense. So if you lie and say that Matthew 1 and 16 mean Joseph begat Christ, which you bet not, because you're going to get smashed in the Greek language or the Hebrew language, I will argue that begat isn't always literal. So if you want to play those games, I'll play these games then. Okay, well if you say that that's begat, then guess what? I'll argue that ain't literal. And my proof ain't literal, and this is my proof, which is again why Matthew had to tell us exactly how the Messiah was born, how he was born. No one in a genealogy is ever explained in full detail of their birth, meaning how they were born, in full detail, like a storyline. Because their birth, meaning everybody else, was like anyone else. It was natural versus spiritual, like the Messiah. That's not a guess. It's a direct comparison of the text. Now, somebody missed that, so let me slow it down one more time. From Jerome, 3 kings was skipped over. So Jerome, 3 kings, once again, was skipped over. Then Matthew leaves these names out. And then he what? He puts Uzziah, aka Oziah. Let's run that back one more time. When Matthew actually writes in Matthew 1 and 8, and Asa begat Jehoshaphat, and Jehoshaphat begat Jeroam. And this is before the three kings that he skipped historically in what you call the Old Testament. And Jeroam begat who? The three kings. Look, skipped it. He skipped three kings, as I named earlier, and he goes to Uzziah, aka Ozias. So Matthew's order is Asa, Jehoshaphat, Jeroam. Skip king 1, skip king 2, skip king 3. Then Matthew puts Uzziah, aka Oziah's name. What Chronicles prove what actually happened is the kings that are actually missing. All right. So the throne passed through three kings long before Uzziah ever reigned, aka sat on the throne. King Azariah, 2 Chronicles 22:1. King Joash, 2 Chronicles 24:1. And King Amaziah, 2 Chronicles 25:1. Those three kings right here. And then what happens after that? What happens after that? He goes to, let me make this bigger for you, because it goes from Jeroam to all the way to Uzziah, aka Ozias. But he skipped these three kings right here. Those are the chapters and verses to run the timeline down. What Matthew skipped on purpose, Matthew writes, Jeroam begat Uzziah, but Chronicles says this right here, the same three kings I just shown you. Matthew jumps straight to King Uzziah, aka Azariah, aka Ozias. Kill shot, short and deadly. Matthew says Jeroam begat Uzziah, even though three literal biological fathers are missing. Therefore, begat does not require a direct father-son sperm transmission. It can mean lineage succession. Once that is admitted, Joseph can be placed legally, just like those three names, just like that name was in Matthew 1, how he did that. He legally skipped generations and put someone else that they did not begat. He did that legally. Let's keep that same energy right here then. So that being said, once that's admitted, Joseph can be placed legally in Matthew 1 without biologically fathering Yeshua. And Matthew 1:16 remains intact. Now I know. What the hell you thinking? How many years in between these three missing kings in the generational chain? According to 2 Chronicles 22, he reigned for 1 year. 2 Chronicles 22. Then 2 Chronicles 24 verse 1, we hold on, we go back. King Ahaziah ruled 1 year. Then we go to 24th chapter, 2 Chronicles. We see that King Joash ruled 40 years. All right. Then we see King Amaziah, he ruled 29 years. All right. So we got 1 year, 40 years, 29 years. That total is 70. What Matthew says instead was what? And Asa begat Jehoshaphat, and Jehoshaphat begat Jeroam, and Jeroam begat Oziah. Matthew compresses 70 years of kingship history into one phrase. Begat. Jeroam begat Uzziah or Ozias. But was that literal? No. And the Bible is the proof that begat don't always mean literal. The undeniable conclusion, Matthew skips these three kings, King Ahaziah, King Joash, and he skips King Amaziah. Yet he still used the word begat. This proves from the scripture itself that begat does not always mean direct biological fatherhood. It can mean lineage succession. All right. So start with that. Start with what Matthew actually says and anchor the text, ladies and gentlemen. So Matthew 1:7-8, it says, and Asa begat Jehoshaphat, Jehoshaphat begat Jeroam, Jeroam begat Ozias, aka Uzziah. So his chain is Asa, Jehoshaphat, Jeroam, Oziah. All right. The objection you're anticipating is, well, how do you know Ozias is the same person in one of the Chronicles? Good. Let's prove it. So as you see already right here, we're going to prove Asa, Jehoshaphat, and Jeroam are the same people in Chronicles. Asa, 2 Chronicles 14 verse 1. So Abiah slept with his fathers, and they buried him in the city of David. And Asa, you see that? His son reigned in his stead. All right. His daddy name was Abijah. All right, and the one before that was a Rehoboam. All right. So that being said, then we got Jehoshaphat, which comes after 2 Chronicles 17, and Jehoshaphat reigned in his stead, meaning after him. So Matthew's Jehoshaphat chronicles Jehoshaphat. This is just a Greek spelling difference, not a different person. All right. So in your Matthew is spelled like this, but in Chronicles, spelled like this. Same person. Then we got Jeroboam. When we go 4 chapters later. 2 Chronicles 21 verse 1, it says, now Jehoshaphat slept with his fathers and was buried with his fathers in the city of David. And Jeroboam, there it is, his son reigned in his stead. See that? So Matthew's Jeroboam, see that? It's Chronicles Jeroboam. Same person. Again, Greek versus Hebrew spelling, same king. So far, every single name Matthew lists matches Chronicles exactly. This is what my brother didn't fully understand and was grasping, because he was looking at it like, well, what do you mean? So here we go. Now, the key move, prove Uzziah is Uzziah Azariah. My brother wanted me to do that. All right. This is where people try to wiggle and they can't. So, step 1, Chronicles shows who comes after Jeroboam. How do we know? 2 Chronicles 21, verse 18 and 19, which says, and after all this, the Lord smote him in his bowels with an incredible disease, and Jehoram slept with his fathers. So, Jeroboam dies. See that? Step 2, Chronicles explicitly lists the next kings, and they are not Uzziah, aka Ozias, as mentioned in Matthew 1 and 8. It's not him yet. It's who? Ahaziah. 2 Chronicles 22 and 1. Ahaziah reigned in his stead. Remember, we already went over this. 2 Chronicles 24 and 1. Joash. 2 Chronicles 25 and 1. Amaziah. Step 3, Chronicles literally introduce Uzziah, aka what Matthew 1 and 8 calls Ozias, Hebrew Uzziyahu, and calls him by 2 names. So he's called by 2 names. All right, 2 names. 2 Chronicles 26 and 1, it said the people of Judah took Uzziah, see that, who was 16 years old, and made him king in the room of his father Amaziah. So now we see right there, that's his daddy, as we just read here in 2 Chronicles 25 and 1. So now 2 Chronicles 26 and 3, it says 16 years old, Uzziah began to reign. But then in 2 Kings, ladies and gents, 2 Kings 15, 1 and 2, it says in the 20th and 7th year, look at this, Jeroboam, king of Israel, began, look at this, Azariah, the son of who? Amaziah, king of Judah, to reign. See that? Same thing we just read about Amaziah in 2 Chronicles 25 verse 1. And then of course 2 Chronicles 26 verse 1. Links up with 2 Kings 15 and 1. So Uzziah is Azariah, aka Ozias. Alright. In Matthew 1 and 8. Same person. Same father, Amaziah, same reign, same king, 2 names. Alright. Now we connect Uzziah to Uzziah linguistically. Ozias in the Greek form Uzziah. Hebrew, look at that, Uzziyahu, as I just shown you. And Greek, Ozias. This is standard biblical translation, not speculation. Matthew is writing in Greek, Chronicles preserved in Hebrew. Same king, same reign, same lineage. Final lock. Matthew and Chronicles line up perfectly with one difference. Chronicles shows this order: Jeroboam, Ahaziah, Joash, Amaziah, Uzziah. Matthew compresses it to who? Jeroboam all the way. He skips some 3 kings and he put Ozias, aka Uzziah. This is not a name confusion. That is intentional genealogical compression. Keal shot conclusion. You can say out loud to the people who don't believe in the virgin birth, don't understand this. Matthew Chronicles and Kings are talking about the same royal line. Asa, in Jehoshaphat, and Jerome are identical in both books. Chronicles then proves that Ahaziah, Joaz, and Amaziah ruled between who? Jeroboam and Uzziah. Those are the three kings that were skipped. Matthew skips those three kings and jumps straight to Uzziah, or Ozias, which he calls Ozias in Greek. So the issue is not different people or different names. The issue is that Matthew deliberately compressed the genealogy. That proves begat in Matthew cannot always mean direct biological fatherhood. No wiggle room, no name escape. All right, I think we got that. So now we finna go to the actual slideshow, ladies and gentlemen. All right, counting all the names. All right, so first part, standard list, counting the names. If you count the names, it go down to Joseph 40, Yeshua 41, Christ. Joseph's number 40, Yeshua's 41 on the list. You total of 41 names. Meaning if you count from Abraham all the way down to Christ, that's at 41 names. Oops, got a problem. Then we got the full list, adding the skipped kings. This is for you who always say, if you ask them, well, what does begat mean? Well, it means from father to child. Are you sure? Yes, it always mean that. Yes. Okay, well then, if that's the case, then we got these three kings right here. Ahaziah, Joash, and Amaziah. And you know what that means? Now the count is really messed up because according to your doctrine, begat always means what? From father to child. So if that's the case, your count is messed up even more. So Matthew 1 and 8, guess what? You got to insert them three kings in now because that wasn't a literal begatting in Matthew 1 and 8. So now the count is really messed up and now it's 44 names, not 42. So Matthew's count, 14 generations each. Remember, he didn't say names, he said generations. Don't let them get away with trying to count names. Make sure they do generations, and you're going to understand this fully by the time this video is over. So you can see that no matter how they're slicing this, the count is going to be off if you deny the virgin birth. So at this point, it's not really about if you believe in it or not. It's just saying, hey, well, can we count generations and come to the same conclusion in both scenarios? Virgin birth versus non-virgin birth. Well, if you're non-virgin birth, it's impossible. If you're virgin birth, then it's very well possible. It is intact. It is exact. So from Abraham to David, 14 generations. So Abraham to David, Matthew 1, 2 through 6. Then from David to the carrying away of Babylon or the exile, 14 generations. All right, David to Jeconiah, given the verses, Matthew 1, 7 through 11. From exile to Babylon, exile to Christ, 14 generations. So from Jeconiah to Yeshua, Matthew 1, 12 through 16. 14 plus 14 plus 14 equals 42 generations, ladies and gentlemen. 14 generations. Not about names, about generations. Keep this in mind. It's going to be very important later. Now I move to the next thing I want to show you. Jeconiah, the pivot point. All right, because we just saw right here, Jeconiah in the middle, and we see it right here again. Next, I move. The next thing I want to show you, the pivot point. Jeconiah, the pivot point. Matthew 1, verse 11 and 12. Before the exile ends there, Josiah to Jeconiah, Matthew 1:11. It says about the time of the Babylonian captivity. Got the exile. So after the exile, a new block begins. Jeconiah to who? Shealtiel. Matthew 1 verse 12. Start of block 3. 14 generations. If you have not watched video 1, you're already confused. So you got before the exile, Josiah to Jeconiah, Matthew 1 and 11, about the time the carrying went to Babylon captivity. That's the end of block 2, 14 generations. Then after the Babylon exile, it goes from Jeconiah to Shealtiel. Start of block 3, 14 generations. Start of block 3, that's 14 generations. Jeconiah is not counted twice. He marks the end of one era and the beginning of another. All right. So why this matters, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to keep on the ball rolling. Let me slow this down because this is where a lot of people get confused or tripped up. And I want to be fair and accurate. Matthew chapter 1 is not a random list of names. It is a structured genealogy. Somebody say structured genealogy. Structured genealogy. Built around 3 historical eras. Somebody say 3 historical eras. 3 historical eras. And Matthew tells us that himself in verse 17. Matthew 1:17 says there are what? 14 generations from Abraham to David, 14 generations from David to the Babylonian exile or the carrying away to Babylon, and then 14 generations from the Babylonian exile or from the carrying away of Babylon unto Christ. So Matthew was counting generations, not just reading off names. If you let them get away reading off names, they're going to trick you and be slick. Matthew did not say names, he said generations. Now here is where Jeconiah comes in. And Matthew 1:11 says, Josias begat Jeconiah and his brethren about the time that they were carried away into Babylon. Then Matthew 1:12 says, and after they were brought to Babylon, Jeconiah begat Shealtiel. At first glance, some people think that Matthew made a mistake or that Jeconiah is being counted twice. But that is not what's happening. Matthew was using Jeconiah as a hinge point. Somebody say hinge point. Hinge point. Look the definition up, you know what it means. Homework. Jeconiah is the last king before the exile, or before they carry away to Babylon. And at the same time, he is the starting point after the exile, going into the third block. He is one man with 2 historical roles. So Matthew places him at the end of the second group and at the beginning of the third group. This is not a duplication. This is a division of eras. Matthew is intentionally marking, here is where the monarchy ends. Here is where the exile of the carrying away to Babylon begins. And that proves something very important, that Matthew is structuring history, not giving a strict biological chart, which will explain why them 3 names was missing. Now watch how this connects to the virgin birth. Matthew ends the final group at Christ, not Joseph. Joseph appears inside the final block, but Christ is the end point. If Joseph were the biological father, then Christ would become an extra generation, making him the 15th generation after the exile. That would directly contradict Matthew 1:17 though. Now before we continue, I want to show you something. For you people who will be too lazy for this, all you gotta do is right here. Did Matthew skip 3 kings in Matthew 1:8? Yes, Matthew omits 3 kings. Look at that. Boom. There it is right there. See that? So he definitely skipped it. Some told me, let's look this up. He skipped it. So you can see that I'm not making this up, ladies and gentlemen. All right. But look it up on your own. Now we go back to where we were, ladies and gents. So let me go back to the, wait, here we go. Boom. All right. So I'm going to start here. Let me make this bigger for you. Matthew is structuring history, not giving an exact biological chart. Now watch how this connects to the virgin birth. Matthew ends the final group at Christ, not at Joseph. Joseph appears inside the final block, meaning the final count, of course. But Christ is the end point, meaning the destination, the goal. If Joseph were the biological father, then Christ would become an extra generation, making him the 15th generation after the carrying away to Babylon. That would directly contradict Matthew 1:17. So Matthew's structure only works if Joseph is included legally, keyword legally, not biologically. And Christ is the final generation by divine action, not by human begetting. This same Matthew already showed us that begat does not always mean direct father to son biology, because early in the genealogy, he skips 3 literal kings, and we already know who those kings are: Ahaziah, Joash, and Amaziah. Those kings existed, they reigned, but Matthew left them out on purpose to preserve the generational structure. Got that? So, in short, once you non-virgin verse admits that Matthew compressed generations, which you have no choice on, but once you admit that, don't run from it. Keep that same energy. Admit that Matthew 1:8 still say begat. They can no longer demand that Joseph must be the biological father of Christ, that it begat. You can no longer use that argument anymore. And look, if you believe in the virgin birth, don't let them run from that. You make them acknowledge that. Make them acknowledge it. So, because I can't wait to get to the seed part, because we're going to show some of the hypocrisy in that. We'll do the seed videos. But anyway, the count collapsed if Joseph is the biological father, because Joseph is, listen y'all, listen to this part right here. The count collapsed if Joseph is the biological father, because Joseph is already a generation. Somebody say it with me. Joseph is already a generation. Let's say it again. Joseph is already a generation. One more time. Joseph is already a generation. So the count is off, but the count becomes perfect if Christ is born of a virgin and Joseph is put there legally, not biologically. You see that? So the question is not whether Matthew made a mistake. The question is whether we're willing to accept what Matthew actually wrote. Short kill shot. Jeconiah proves Matthew was structuring history, not tracking sperm. Once you see that the virgin birth is not a problem, it is actually the solution. What happens if Joseph is the biological father? So let's do what Matthew says. From Babylon unto Christ of 14 generations. If Joseph is the biological father, what number is Christ in the group? 13. Yeshua HaMashiach. If Joseph is biological, Christ becomes the 15th generation. All right, he becomes the 15th generation. So Matthew's count is broken, ladies and gentlemen. It's broken. So I actually meant to put 15 right there. Apologize on that. But Matthew's count is broken. The 3 kings that were skipped, we already see. All right. Let me show you what Matthew was doing, because once you see this visually, the argument is over. Matthew 1:17 says that there are 3 sets of 14 generations ending with Christ, not Joseph. So now I'm going to do exactly what Matthew told us to do. I'm going to count generations, not names. And I'm going to respect his structure. Here's the problem. If Joseph is the biological father, then Joseph becomes 1 generation. And Christ becomes another generation after him. That immediately makes Christ the 15th generation from the Babylonian exile, not the 14. That means Matthew math breaks. Think about that. That means his count will be off. And Matthew does not make mathematical errors in his own genealogy. Now, here is what people try to escape. They say, well, begat always mean biological father. But Matthew already destroyed that argument himself. Look at Matthew 1:8. We already know the kings that were skipped. But if you read 2 Chronicles 22-26, you will see the 3 kings that were skipped. We won't have to go over that because you already know that. But we can tell you that Matthew skipped all 3 of them on purpose. So Matthew used the word begat even though 3 biological fathers are missing. See that? Joseph, once that's admitted, Joseph don't need to be the biological father for Yeshua to be included in genealogy, because Joseph is included legally. Christ is included divinely. And now Matthew's count works perfectly. 14, 14, 14. So the virgin birth don't break Matthew's genealogy. The virgin birth actually protects it. If Joseph is the biological father, Matthew count fails. If Christ is born of a virgin, Matthew count stands. I'm going to repeat myself multiple times before we dive into the next topic, ladies and gentlemen. Think about this. 3 kings skip, 3 generations skip, 70 years of history. 70 years of history. Yes, he skipped 70 years. Names do not always equal generations. Don't equal generations. Why counting names breaks everything. So if they try to be slick. Matthew does not count names. Christ is the 14th generation, ladies and gentlemen. The 14th generation. Matthew 1:17. If you go by names from Abraham all the way down to Christ, guess how many names you're going to count? 41. If you go by generations with the virgin birth, 14 generations per block. 41 names, one generation can cover many names. Christ is the 14th generation. It says from the carrying away to Babylon to Christ, the 14 generations. You got Joseph as the father, that's 15, buddy. Counting names doubles Christ and creates 15 generations. Matthew's number structure of 14 plus 14 plus 14 only works if Christ is counted as the 14th generation, as Matthew 1:17 states. And Joseph is not the biological father because Joseph himself is already counted as a generation himself. And the destination is Christ, not Joseph. Let's slow this down and read Matthew carefully, because this is where most people go wrong. Adding 3 skipped kings makes your counting names much worse. And this is for you non-virgin birth believers that say that begot means what? It means from father to child. That's what it always means. Okay. Well, then guess what? Keep that same energy. Let the same rules apply. All right. You go to your Numbers 1:18. All right. Well, let your rules apply then. Let your rules apply. So Matthew 1:8, and Asa begat Jehoshaphat. Jehoshaphat begat Jeroam, and Jeroam begat Uzziah, which we know that's not the case. Excuse me. You count the names once again, 41. Uzziah, 14. So under your own rule, you must count them. Ahaziah, Joash, and Amaziah. You must count these 3 kings. Under your own rule, you must count them 70 years, buddy. Only 3 options. Option A, disprove your rule and admit that begat does not always mean biological. You better not do that one, because we're going to get you. Option B, stick with your rule and make begat literal and count all biological names. Joseph cannot be legal, not biological. I'm saying Joseph can be legal, not biological. 14 plus 14 plus 41 plus 14, 44. Count still breaks. Reject your rule or reject Matthew? Huh? Count still breaks. Reject your rule or reject Matthew? Which one you gonna do? Begat always mean biological. Either Joseph can be legal or Matthew's math is destroyed. Or drop the New Testament. There's an option. Just say you just don't believe. Matthew never said names. Matthew said generations. That matters. A generation is a transfer of lineage authority, not just a name on the list. A name is simply a label. Matthew was counting generational movement, not head count. Now look at the visual that we're going to see. If you count names, you end up with 41 names from Abraham to Christ. That already breaks Matthew 1:17, because Matthew explicitly said 14 generations. 14 generations. 14 generations. That equals 42 generations. 41 is not 42. Somebody say that with me. 41 is not 42. One more time. 41 is not 42. So something's wrong. Now here's the key point most people miss. Again, Joseph is already counted as a generation in Matthew's structure. He's inside the block, not the destination, because the destination is Christ. Matthew does not count at Joseph. He does not end at Joseph. Matthew ends at Christ. The verse does not say from the carrying away to Babylon unto Joseph. No, it says from the carrying away of Babylon unto Christ. That means Christ is the 14th generation of the final block. Now here's the kill shot. If Joseph is the biological father, then Christ once again becomes the 15th generation, not 14, because Joseph himself again is a generation. That destroys Matthew's structure if y'all do that. So to make Matthew wrong, all you have to do is deny the virgin birth. But if you accept a virgin birth, everything looks perfectly according to the Matthew's math. Joseph is counted as a generation. Christ is the destination, who's also as a generation. The math stays intact. Matthew 1:17 stays exactly as he wrote it. This is why Matthew does not count names. This is why Matthew counts generations. And this is why the virgin birth is not theology or doctrine first. It's mathematics and grammar first. Matthew's number structure only works one way, and that way ends at Christ being born of Mary. Now let's go to the next slide. You can explain to the non-virgin birth community. Pay attention. They always say begat only means parent to child, right? Adding the 3 name skip makes the counting worse, not better. All right, you see, I'm repeating this again. If they use that, let's assume y'all rule for a moment. Begat always means literal begat father. Fine. If that's your rule, you don't get to pick and choose where it applies. If y'all gonna stick to that rule, begat always means father to child, then you don't get to pick and choose where it applies. If begat always means literal, then every biological father must be counted. Must be. Some of y'all can't. Oh, such and such was off. He was off. All right, well, then say Matthew was off, and then go ahead and count them 3 names on in then. You get cancer. Oh, John the Baptist was off. You get people say, oh man, such and such wasn't in the truth. Okay, well then y'all keep that same energy. Keep the same energy, and go ahead and add them 3 names in there. Y'all know who I'm talking about. IGPK. They teach that John the Baptist wasn't always in the truth. Okay, well then say that Matthew was off. Use that same logic, use that same energy, and then go ahead and add your 3 names in there. Then you make it worse. If you're gonna go by names, you make it worse. If you go by generation, you make it worse. So, step 2, show Matthew's compressed line the problem. Matthew 1:8. Asah begat Jehoshaphat, Jehoshaphat begat Jerome, and Jerome begat Uzziah. Wait a minute. Matthew jumps directly from Jerome to Uzziah, as we already shown here. We already shown this. Take a look at the screen. We've already shown this, ladies and gentlemen. From Jerome, right? He went from Jerome to Uzziah. He went from this name to that name. See that? However, he skipped these 3 kings. That's 3 full kings Matthew intentionally skips: King Ahaziah, King Joash, King Amaziah. Look at the timeline, it's important. The 3 kings ruled across roughly 70 years of real biblical history. That ain't poetic, it ain't symbolism, it ain't a metaphor. This is documented royal succession. So Matthew knowingly compresses 70 years into a begat chain. Now apply their rule consistently. Kill shot, pay attention. Now here's where the argument collapses, falls like the walls of Jericho. If you insist that begat must mean literal biological father, then you must add these 3 names back into the list, since begat always means from parent to child. You don't get to ignore them. Add the literal parent to child back into the genealogy. What happens when you add them? Boom, the explosion. Once you add King Ahaziah, King Joash, and King Amaziah, the names that Matthew skipped in Matthew 1:8, 2 things happen immediately. The number of names increases. That's just a fact. So by your begat rule, guess what's going to happen right there with your doctrine? Second thing, the number of generations increases. So by your begat rule, shots fired. Now your count is not just off by 1, it's off by multiple generations. The 14-14-14 structure is obliterated. So now you openly admit that you're not even going to do with what Matthew did, what Matthew said, how he did his count. So, step 7, make sure, look, for y'all virgin birth believers, make sure you corner them logically, but truthfully, because they will want to run to another scripture or another point to get away from dealing with this count. And there's no escape. Don't let them run. They got to address that. So now these non-virgin birth believers only have 3 options if they're being truthful with themselves. Option A, admit that begat does not always mean
literal biological father, which opens the door for Joseph being legal, not biological. Shots fired. Or option B, force begat, to be literal everywhere, which destroys Matthew count entirely. Or option C, drop the New Testament completely. They don't believe in it fully anyway, because they're saying Matthew's count is now wrong. There's no fourth option. Kill shot. You cannot argue that begat always means literal and keep Matthew's numbers intact. Matthew himself proves you wrong by skipping 3 biological fathers, father to father to father, across 70 years of history. There were 3 kings, 3 fathers, begat, skipped. So the moment you deny the virgin birth, the math collapsed, the timeline breaks, and Matthew 1:17 becomes false. There's no way around that. The moment you say that begat always means father to child, okay, cool. Matthew count is off. Why? Because generations increase, names increase. But if you accept the virgin birth, every number actually locks in perfectly. If not, then you just need to just drop the New Testament. You're done. When they say, well, Christ is 42, so I mean, it still works. A claim, that's the claim usually. All right, cool. Joseph is 41, Yeshua is 42. That still matches Matthew 1:17. So what's the problem? That's what they'll say, right? That sound clean until you read Matthew carefully. I gotta remind you. Matthew 1:17 does not say that there are 42 names. It says, so all the generations from Abraham to David are what? 14 generations. And from David into the carrying away of Babylon are 14 generations. And from the carrying away of Babylon to Christ are 14 generations. 3 blocks, 14, 14, 14. 14 generations each. Christ is the end point of the final block. That means Joseph is inside the 3rd block. Remember, he's a generation within himself. Christ is the conclusion of the 3rd block. If Joseph is the biological father, then Christ becomes an extra generation, not the 14th. You now have Joseph equals generation 14, Christ generation 15. And if they're going by the begat means father to child, now they just made it worse. Because now you got to add 3 more. Ooh, that's just bad. That's just all bad. That definitely contradicts Matthew's own summary, though. So according to non-virgin birthers, they say begat means from father to child. Yet Matthew 1:16 never says Jesus begat Joseph, did it? No. So that's another problem for them, because Matthew never actually says that. He never actually says that. He says born of Mary. He said that born of Mary. And that Greek word egenete, of course, is in the passive form, not active. And if your elders don't know the difference between active and passive, then at that point, this is already going over their head. They don't understand active or passive. This means nothing to them because they don't understand Greek at all. If they don't understand active voice versus passive voice, what do you mean? I've already explained this in my video. Matthew 1:16. Iakov de egenesin. Ton Iosef ton Andras Marias exes egenete. Iosef ha legamanas Christos. So one right here, Strong's G1080, the root word is ganao, begat. But that word is aorist, meaning it's in the past. It's a verb. And it is active voice. If they can't tell you what that means, this is going over their heads. But then when we look here, egenete. This here, the same root word, ganao, that's why it's still G1080. You got to inflect it, the word in the text. Y'all looking at the root word. If you've watched my series from part 1 all the way to this one, you already know what I mean by this. There's also a verb. It's also errors, meaning in the past. It's also, but this one is not active. It's passive. Passive. They don't understand proper Greek grammar. Iosef, proper noun. Thon is the direct object. Accusative. If they don't know what that means, this means nothing. Andras is also accusative in singular masculine. But then all of a sudden this exhase, it marks the source. Look at this.
No longer masculine, feminine now. This is all about Mary. It grammatically excludes Joseph out of the picture. But I've already explained this in the previous video, so I don't have to continue to go down that road. If that going over your head or your elder's head don't know what I'm talking about, then they can't tell you that I'm wrong because they don't even understand Greek grammar at all. So, that being said, if you just count names, Joseph is the 41st name on the list in the line, and Jesus is not counted as the 42nd begat name. Look at what we got here, ladies and gentlemen. So, from 1 all the way to 14, from 15 all the way to 27, and from 28 all the way down to 42. Remember, Joseph is a generation himself. Then you got Yeshua. Yeshua, 42, born of Mary. Matthew counts 14 generations, not names. This is where y'all go wrong when y'all do this. And we'll explain further. Joseph is already a generation. Christ is the generation that counts us off. 42, Yeshua, born of Mary. Why counting names actually makes things worse? Here's the point people miss. Matthew already proved that begat does not mean direct biological fatherhood. Matthew 1 and 8. Matthew says Jerome begat Uzziah or Ozias in Matthew 1 and 8. But Chronicles tells us Matthew skipped 3 kings. 70 years of history, we already know. Option A, begat does not always mean literal father. Then Joseph can be in the list without biologically fathering Yeshua. Option B, begat always means literal father. Then Matthew list is historically incomplete. And what? Your name count becomes even more wrong. Option C, Matthew was wrong, which means rejecting the New Testament's authority. There's no fourth option. So again, when I count names, I get 41 names before Yosef. Remember, it said unto Christ. Unto Christ. People say Yeshua makes 42, so everything's fine. But Matthew never said names. He said generations. Matthew ends the final block at Christ, not Joseph. Joseph is inside the count. Christ is the destination. If Joseph is the biological father, Christ becomes an extra generation, making him the 15th generation instead of the 14th generation. And that breaks Matthew 1 and 17. And Matthew already proved in chapter 1, verse 8, that begat doesn't always mean literal fatherhood, because he skipped 3 biological kings on purpose. So either begat is flexible or Matthew is wrong. But you cannot force Joseph into the biological father without destroying Matthew's count. Let that sink in. You cannot force Joseph to be the biological father without destroying Matthew's count. Can't do it. Now, let's show the generation how it lines up perfectly. This is proof that he wasn't looking at names alone. Take Matthew at his word. Generational math works perfectly. So all the generations, not names, but generations from Abraham to David are 14 generations. And from David until the carrying away into Babylon are 14 generations. And from the carrying away into Babylon to Christ are 14 generations. From Abraham to David, right? We got Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Judah, Perez, Hezron, Ram, Aminadab, Nishon, Solomon, Boaz, Obed, Jesse, David. 14 generations, right? Matthew chapter 1, 2 through 6. But then it says from the carrying away into Babylon into Christ, right? Of 14 generations. 15, Solomon. 16, Rehoboam, Abiah, Asa, Jehoshaphat, Jeroam, Uzziah. Remember that? Remember them 3 kings right there. That wasn't even literal. Jotham, Ahaz, Hezekiah, Manasseh, Ammon, Jeconiah, and then we have the chapters you can find it in. Matthew chapter 1, 6 to 11. That's 14 generations. But the last chain says from until the carrying away into Babylon into Christ. Salathiel, Zerubbabel, Abiud. 32 says Eliakim. Then we got Azor, Zadok, Achim, Elihud, Eleazar, Mattathan. 39 we got Jacob. And then we have 40, Joseph, who's a generation himself, and then Christ, which is the ending point. 14 generations. 14 plus 14 plus 14 equals 42 generations. Christ is the 14th generation. Matthew's number structure only works only one way. 14, 14, 14 equals 42 generations. So, that being said, first things first. All right. First things first. I know what you're thinking when you saw that list. Names from 15 to 28 and numbers 29 to 42 are 13 names apiece, i.e. from 15 to 28 and list 29 through 42 are 13 names apiece. That's not 14 names. Trust me, I get it. This was my first confusion when I first encountered this, y'all. When you count names, the middle and the final sections do not divide cleanly into 14 names each. That's precisely the point. Matthew's not counting names, counting generations. And those are two different things. So when you look at in that little presentation I just showed you in the middle slide and the last slide, and you see 13 names right there, that's the point. That's the point that I'm arguing. It's not names. So that being said, let's go back. Now let me show you why this matters and how to explain it without confusion. Right here, ladies and gents. Why the 13 names per section issue happens. So like, in other words, from here, from David the carrying away to Babylon, from the carrying away of Babylon to Christ. So from Matthew chapter 1, 6 to 11, Matthew chapter 1, 12 through 16. So why the 13 names per section issue happens. When you list names only, here's what happens. Section 1, Abraham to David. The section does not conveniently line up close to 14 names, which tricks people into thinking that Matthew is doing a name only count. Section 2, David from the carrying away to Babylon. When you count names literally, you end up with 13 names because Matthew intentionally compresses genealogy. He skips 3 kings, Ahaziah, Joash, and Amaziah. That proves that begat don't mean direct biological father every time. And you got section 3, from the carrying away of Babylon to Christ, meaning the exile. Again, counting names only gives you 13, not 14 in that presentation. So yes, you split names. You have names 15 to 28, 13 names. Names 29 through 42, 13 names. That's not a mistake. That's our math. That's our evidence, ladies and gentlemen, for you virgin birth believers. Why does destroys name counting? Here's the kill shot logic. Matthew never said 14 names once again. Matthew said 14 generations. So all the generations from Abraham to David are 14 generations. If someone insists on counting names, they break Matthew's structure. They expose the skipped kings, what they got to add them now. They prove begat is not always biological. They end up with uneven sections, which forces a decision. A, Matthew's wrong, or the reader is counting the wrong thing, i.e. the names instead of the generations. Matthew's not wrong, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go ahead here. Why Joseph and Christ both matters as generations. This is the part people miss. And you're right to hammer it, you virgin birth believers, to them. Joseph is already a generation. Christ is already a generation. The destination of the count is Christ, not Joseph. So if Joseph were the biological father, Joseph would occupy the final generational slot. Christ would become an extra generation. The count would be 15 generations and not 14 generations in the final section. And again, that will contradict what Matthew said in Matthew 1 and 17. There's no mathematical fix for that. Why the virgin birth makes everything lock perfectly. When you accept what the text actually says, generations, Joseph equals the legal father counted. Christ equals born from her, meaning Mary, counted as the final generation, 42. No extra generation is added. The structure stays at 14 generations plus 14 generations plus 14 generations, which equals 42 generations. The genealogy works only this way. Not emotionally, not theologically or doctrinally, mathematically. When you count names, guess what? The structure collapses. When you count generations, the math is perfect. So the question is not whether the count works. The question is whether you are counting what Matthew said to count. That's airtight, ladies and gentlemen. The uneven names, totals, are not a problem, family. They are the proof that Matthew never intended name counting in the first place. So if you've discovered this, as I did, then guess what? You didn't discover a flaw. You actually exposed the counting method, Matthew's counting method. And once that clicks, the virgin birth isn't optional anymore. It's required by the math. Matthew's math of 14 generations. Some of y'all are going to have to watch this 2 or 3 times to fully comprehend this. Many of you already clicked from the first video. Matthew 1:17 leaves you with only 3 options, ladies and gents. A, reject the virgin birth. If you do that, Joseph becomes the final generation. Christ becomes an extra generation. The count becomes 15, not 14 generations. Matthew's structure collapses. Matthew 1:17 becomes false. Or option B, count names instead of generations. Okay, if you do that, sex is split into uneven totals. Skip kings, expose non-literal begat. So you got to add them back. Matthew's wording is ignored. You override Matthew's own explanation. So some of y'all be, oh man, that's David off. Oh y'all, well this wasn't literal. Okay, well guess what then? Let's literally count them kings then, buddy, because we do know it went from king to king to king. Add them back on in, ye begatters. Non-virgin birth believers, you run into a problem with option B. Option C, you can accept Matthew's structure the way he said it. Generations, not names. Joseph counted legally. Christ counted as the final generation. 14 plus 14 plus 14 generations equals, voila, perfect, 42 generations. Or you could go option D, actually. Call Matthew a liar. He didn't count that right. He can't be trusted, so I no longer believe in the New Testament. You can go with that one. This is not a doctrinal argument, though, y'all. This is a math problem. Matthew 1:17. Again, this is not a doctrinal argument. This is a math problem for you all. Okay, now, as far as the next slide, I call this the no escape timeline slide. My purpose, well, the slide visually proves why Matthew had to count generations and not names, and why the virgin birth is not optional if Matthew is telling the truth, which I know he is. It answers the last fallback objection that you all may have. You may ask me, okay, well, why does Matthew count like that? Or why does Matthew count generations and not names? Because time does not equal sperm. Because time does not equal sperm. Why Matthew counts generations and not names? Because time does not equal sperm. What a generation is. 1 generation equals 1 lifespan, not 1 name. So, Abraham to Isaac. 1 generation passes when a life ends, not when a name appears. Why name counting fails. Matthew skips 3 kings in Matthew 1 and 8. 70 years missing. Ahaziah, 2 Chronicles 22 verse 1. Joaz, 2 Chronicles 24 and 1. Amaziah, 2 Chronicles 25 and 1. Remember, before King Ahaziah, there was Jeroboam. And remember, the text said from Jeroboam to Uzziah. Or Oziah's in Matthew 1 and 8. But Uzziah don't come to after this king right here. Amaziah. If begat always being biological, Matthew just broke his own rule. While the virgin birth actually fixed the count, Joseph is already a generation. Christ must be the next one. Joseph already counted. Joseph is already a generation. Christ must be the next one. If begat always mean biological, Matthew just broke his own rule. This is not a doctrinal argument. This is a math problem. Matthew 1 and 17. You reject the virgin birth, you reject Matthew as a true witness. That is the cost. Let this sink in. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, at this point, there is no longer a debate. Matthew told us exactly what he was doing. And Matthew 1 and 17 said 14 generations, 14 generations, 14 generations. From Abraham to David, 14 generations. From David to carrying of Babylon, 14 generations. From carrying of Babylon to Christ, 14 generations. Not unto Joseph. Christ is the destination, the ending point. Joseph is already inside that count. That means Joseph cannot be the biological source
without breaking Matthew's math. If you reject the virgin birth, then you break Matthew's count. If you accept the virgin birth, the count locks in perfectly. That's not theology, it's not doctrine, that's arithmetic. And the reason nobody wants to answer this is because the answer already exists. Matthew wasn't confused, Matthew wasn't mistaken, Matthew wasn't drunk, and Matthew wasn't high. The question is not whether Matthew was right. The question is whether you're willing to accept what he wrote. Let that sink in. Are you willing to accept what Matthew wrote? Are you? Are you going to accept what Matthew wrote? He said generations, not names. Or are you going to accept that? The Joseph problem. The 14 generations from Abraham to David. 14 generations from David to Babylon. Joseph already counted. Christ is the destination. If Joseph is the biological father, Christ becomes an extra generation. Matthew math breaks. No one is answering this because it has an answer. Matthew defined the structure of 14 generations plus 14 generations, 14 generations from Abraham to David to Babylon to Christ. The name counting breaks it. With or without skipped kings. With or without Joseph. If you go by names, that's what you do. Only one reading works. Christ is the destination and Joseph is not the biological father. That's the only option you got. That ain't confusion. This is refusal for you all. The silence is not accidental for Matthew. It's mathematical. It's intentional. So, that being said, I understand that it may not look like a problem at first. For you new people, you first hearing this, I get it. It can come off as a little confusing for you if you're new. But you study people, y'all know. Let me simplify. Matthew does not say he's counting names. He's saying he's counting generations. In Matthew 1:17, Christ is the destination. And the final set of 14, Joseph is already inside of that set. If Joseph was the biological father, then Christ becomes an extra generation, which makes the count exceed what Matthew explicitly states. So the issue is not belief or tradition, brothers and sisters, or your camp doctrine. The issue is whether Matthew's structure is allowed to remain intact or not. If you still do not see the problem, that means you are counting differently than Matthew told us to count. So if you don't get it, that means you are not counting the way Matthew told you to count. That's it. I've placed the responsibility back where it belongs, into y'all hands. Matthew told us exactly how to count. 14 from Abraham to David, 14 from David to carrying to Babylon, and 14 from the carrying away of Babylon to Christ. If Joseph is made the biological source, the count breaks. If Christ remains the destination, meaning at the end, the count holds. This is not a doctrine debate. This is a this is not a denominational issue. This is a math problem that y'all got. And this is a math problem written into the text. Silence is not confusion. Silence is the verdict. That's the reason why he said that. Okay, I'm not done. I have more to come. And I ask you one last time. True or false? Is Joseph biological? If Joseph is the biological father of Yeshua or Jesus, Matthew's count of 14 generations to Christ would be incorrect in Matthew 1:17. Is that true or false? Y'all comment below. And if you say false, then explain to us why and put your count. Listen to me. I want to make something clear real quick. For you non-virgin birth believers, if you don't believe this, if you say it's wrong, please comment for all to see how you got your count. Do the actual count, and remember, it's not names, it's generations. Do that. And keep that same energy, and you better answer Matthew 1:8. What we spoke about it here. If you don't do that, your comment will be removed. We want honesty. If you gon' say this is wrong, put the accuracy and we go with what's right.
But you got to deal with Matthew 1 and 8, and you got to deal with generations, not names. And if you admit that begat don't always mean from father to child, if you admit that, knowing that he put names there and still said begat, then you shouldn't be mad if we say, well, okay, well, it never said Joseph begat Christ, but he's in there. Never said that. So we can legally say the same thing as Matthew 1 and 8. If you admit that, please put that in the comments as well. If you don't put both and show how you came up with it, you know how y'all answer a question with a question? No. Those who disagree, you need to lead off with the generation count, not name count, but generation count. Lead off with that first, then answer the Matthew 1 and 8. If not, keep it moving. You might well not even comment. I won't allow y'all to bring confusion. You're going to bring the truth. And if I ask you questions, you better answer. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not done. I'm definitely not done. So as we see in Matthew chapter 1, verse 15, 15, it says, and Eliud begat Eleazar. And Eleazar begat Mattathan, and Mattathan begat Jacob, and Jacob begat Joseph. It don't even say Joseph begat Christ. It just tells who Joseph was. Relational, not paternal. Say he was the husband of Mary. See that? He was the husband of Mary, of whom was born Christ. Out of her was born Christ. Jesus, who was called Christ. So all the generations from Abraham to David are 14 generations, not names. And from David to the carrying away of Babylon are 14 generations, not names. And from the carrying away to Babylon to Christ are 14 generations, not names. You go here, you see generations singular. The book of the generation, not the book of the name of Jesus Christ, is the generations. You deny the virgin birth, your count is off. That's why it starts off with saying now. Now. The birth of Jesus Christ was on this wise, meaning it happened in this way, in this fashion. When his mother Mary was espoused to Joseph, before they came together, she was found with child. Found with child. That's pregnant. What does of mean? The Holy Ghost. Now, it didn't say Joseph, did it? No. Now, next, I'll be doing a breakdown on this Matthew 1 and 18. But so far, we done went from her to her. And now we're going to go on through. And when we get done with these things, with the Gospels, we'll go to the seed. Because you got the seed. Now, I will say as a disclaimer, all camps don't have the same position on certain things. You got some camps that say Luke 3 is Mary's lineage. You got some camps that say, no, that's Joseph's lineage. I've heard some people say, well, we don't really know, which is I've heard that. So everybody who believes that Joseph is a biological father does not have the same position. Like IUIC, they openly teach that Luke 3 is Mary's lineage. They do that. You know what I'm saying? But that being said, ladies and gentlemen, the question that has to get answered, true or false? If Joseph is the biological father of Christ, Matthew's count of 14 generations to Christ would be incorrect in Matthew 1:17. Is that true? Is that false? Comment down below.